Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Matthew Brown. This is Dr. Andrew Vallo, and we're here at Dental Unfiltered. And today we have a really awesome subject, and I think it's one that is really important to talk about. One is the mindset and how you approach these things and how do you kind of handle it as a leader. It's when disaster strikes, whether it's a hurricane or a storm or giant snowstorm or a pipe breaks in the office, some kind of black swan event that disrupts operations and makes things go crazy, and there's a lot of emotions involved and some unclear thinking and no real strategy because when it happens, you tend to not have been able to plan for it. So I want to talk to Dr. Vallo about he just got through Hurricane Milton, and Doc had all of his practices in the heart of Tampa, so he was not quite ground zero for a hit, but he was going. It was a possibility he was, and it's one thing that I noticed with docs is sometimes these black swan events happen. We kind of go into a mode of like, oh, well, what's going to happen is going to happen, and we don't get proactive in what we're doing and actually move forward and try to drive forward for work. And Doc was doing work. Andrew was doing work the day after the hurricane, had a pretty big day, and I'm curious, Andrew, when you knew this was coming, and me and you both, we were talking the whole time watching the storm together. I think I have 15 plus practices in the greater Tampa area, and then I have a ton in Florida. And I'm watching the storm and hit updates every 5 seconds, looking at where it's going, all the paths, all different models, because it affected my business a lot and affected my clients that matter to me. When this was incoming, what were you already doing when you weren't sure where it was going to land, but you knew it was going to hit your side of Florida, right? Like Tampa Bay was going to get rough. What was your first thing that you were planning?
Yeah. Hey guys. As Matt, just mentioned, it's been a pretty interesting stretch here for us. So, even before Hurricane Milton, we had another hurricane come through about 2 weeks before that, and that one was the one that devastated parts of North Carolina. But it did leave an impact on the Tampa area as well as it headed up the Gulf. So we had to shut down all the practices a couple of weeks before that. Fortunately, I guess, our Invisalign party was sandwiched in between those two hurricane weeks. So, all of if you've listened to our Invisalign party episodes, all of the cost, time, planning, effort that goes into scheduling over 200 guests for these Invisalign parties, which are almost all new patients. We got very lucky. Had the party been the week prior or the week after, we would have likely have had to cancel it, and it would have been very challenging to rebook all of those new patients and find another day for the event. So I always try to be a glass half full kind of person. Obviously it's not fun or easy going through situations like hurricanes and office shutdowns, but in addition to the fact that we were able to have another successful Invisalign party. I actually have not looked at our final count for that party, but I do believe it was very close to the count we did at the last party, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 total cases we closed, from that one event, which is awesome. And that's kind of helping save our production, honestly, at my general offices this month because we've obviously lost, numerous days with these hurricanes here. The other reason that I'm very grateful right now is that none of my practices incurred any damage from the storm, and we all got power back fairly quickly. So there is still, I mean, we are now almost a week removed from the hurricane, and there are still some parts of Tampa that are waiting to get power back. All of our offices had power back within about 3 days after the hurricane, and my house never lost power either. So I think all things considered, very fortunate, very grateful for that. But the reason we wanted to have this episode was really to try to help other docs think about these situations because it might not be a hurricane. As Matt said, it could be a pipe burst, it could be a major snowstorm, it could be a fire. I mean, there's lots of different things that can happen, and it can be tough to be prepared sometimes. So it's just kind of that mindset, that thought process as you approach a situation like this. I guess putting myself back in the moments, as the storm was approaching, and I'll talk specifically about Milton because that's a storm that was projected to head right towards Tampa Bay. If you listen to the media, if you listen to the news, they were saying that this could be the worst storm that the Tampa Bay area has been hit with in over 100 years. There was kind of apocalyptic talks going on And, and unfortunately,
It was like it's
while
going to get hit as a Category 5. Like they said that for like 3 straight days.
I know, so obviously, we want everyone to be safe, and I think officials want people to take these hurricanes seriously, and we want to make sure that people are prepared, and that people in major flood zones probably want to evacuate the area. So I understand all of those things. However, I do think, unfortunately, the media does have a little bias towards exaggeration and towards worst case scenario, and I think some of that is just to get the clicks. So, I think a lot of people that lived in the Tampa area that have, been here for a long time have been through many of these hurricane seasons. There's many years where there's a hurricane that's projected to come at or very close to the Tampa area. And, most of the time, fortunately, they die down, they shift, something like that happens. So, again, I'm not saying not to be prepared. We took precautions. We wanted to make sure our team and our patients were safe and our offices were safe. But at the same time, I think my advice there
I
is
think,
like,
Andrew, I think there's two different prepareds. There's prepared, like, give up, close of amp, leave, and there's prepared, like, are we prepared to restart business as soon as possible? Like, what are our plans for restarting business? Like, I think people think about it two different ways.
well, yeah, you're
There's
right.
prepared safety, and there's prepared how am I going to restart business? And I
Well,
think
I
people don't
think
think about the second one.
I think there's preparing for this incoming event, and then I
Yeah.
think there's preparing for what comes next.
Yes.
How do you reopen successfully, all that stuff. So I think it's important to prepare for both. My point I was going to make, though, is my advice is like, guys, don't lose your mind. Don't freak out. Don't go to Costco and buy 12 months worth of toilet paper. So I guess what did we do, my wife and I, as far as getting things ready at the house? My wife went and filled up both of our cars with gas the one morning when I was working, which was good because it was difficult to get gas. There was some gas shortages, immediately following the storm. But once again, like these things often do, very quickly after the fact, within a few days, things start to normalize. So, when a hurricane hits, everyone fills up with gas before it. It can be tough to get the gas tankers in. And there can be a couple day delay before gas returns to normal. And so people were out at Costco at 4:30 Saturday morning, waiting in line for hours to get gas because Costco finally got gas. But by Sunday, there was almost no lines. And by Monday, it was just business as normal. So, it's just, again, I think my advice is don't freak out. Unless you absolutely need something when things are in short supply, I would just wait. They're going to return to normal. As far as the office and like what we're thinking about as we approach. So myself, my leadership team, my operations manager, my CFO, we closely monitor these situations. We're keeping a close eye on the storm track. We'll have team members that are kind of reaching out, asking 5 or 6 days before this hurricane is coming in, are we closing? When are we closing? All that stuff. So, my first advice is don't shut things down too early because, again, things can change in a hurry and all of a sudden the storm could be tracking in a different direction. So, you can't wait till the last minute to make a decision, but at the same time, you want to have all of the evidence before you do decide, because I've seen other years where, offices have preemptively shut down 4 days in advance, and all of a sudden there is no storm. It's not coming towards us anymore. So I think you've got to keep a close eye on the situation. You've got to keep a cool head. You've got to be logical about it. At the same time, you do have to give your team and your patients enough time, if evacuation is needed. And so with this storm, with Hurricane Milton, with the track, with the intensity it had, there were mandatory evacuations. So we did decide to shut down ahead of time. The storm was projected to come in Wednesday overnight. So Monday at lunchtime, at that point in time, we made the decision that we were going to shut down the offices for Tuesday and Wednesday. That gave my teams plenty of time to prepare their homes, get ready to evacuate. That gave us plenty of time to let patients know that we're scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday, that we need to reschedule them. Update automated messages that were going out to patients, things like that. At that time, the plan was tentatively, if we were able to, we were going to try to reopen with a late start on Thursday. And so we've done that before, where a hurricane kind of hits, in the evening or nighttime, and then by late morning the next day, things are kind of back to normal, powers on, all that good stuff. So that was the plan at that point in time. Most of my teams did evacuate the general Tampa area. But, when these evacuations happen, most people aren't going out of state. They're not going hundreds of miles away. They're typically going maybe an hour north and inland. You're trying to get away from the water. You're trying to get away from kind of the eye of the storm. And so, my wife and I and our son and our dogs went up to my parents' house about an hour north and inland. And in that area, there's a little bit of wind, there's a little bit of rain, but you could barely tell that there was a real storm happening in Florida. Some of my associate docs did decide to go out of state to visit family. And because of the flights, they were not able to get back later that week. So, at that point in time, I was actually planned to do a mastermind event out of state, and I was no longer able to get there. But at that time, I didn't know that that was going to be the case. So I started looking for temp doc coverage for Thursday and Friday. I made a couple posts in some Facebook groups. One of the posts in Dental Nachos actually got a lot of resistance from a few people.
80 comments, I think.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of comments. So, there was a lot of people that were wishing us the best and, praying for us through the hurricane. But there were some people that seemed to take offense to the fact that I was looking for temporary doctor coverage with an incoming hurricane. Again, unfortunately, most of these people that were making these comments didn't live in Florida, have never lived in Florida, have not faced hurricanes, kind of don't understand the situation. One of them even said, "Oh, I would have been open Tuesday and then shut down Wednesday, Thursday, Friday," or something like that.
Yeah, I bet that doc's revenue is like some of those docs that have that idea of like, oh, I'm going to be very conservative about all this stuff. They tend to not have the aggressive mindset you have business wise and have the revenue levels you have. And it's like, I think you were talking to me the whole time leading up to it, and you were doing like constant risk assessments and you were planning properly. And like, it wasn't like you were just like, we're going to open and that's the way it is. There was like,
Right.
your brain was on it for over a week. We talked like 3 or 4 times that week.
Well, I think it's, again, you can't make emotional based decisions. So I think a lot of people, get overwhelmed, they get emotional, whatever it is. You've got to use logic at all times, and you've got to analyze it. And again, we made sure that our team and our patients were absolutely safe. We have a group chat for our entire organization, and even at the time when we were hoping maybe we could reopen Thursday, and actually the last hurricane that came through, we were able to open that next morning. And that's actually normally the case. So, even as we're kind of talking through the situation, we're letting team members know, hey, the hope is tentatively we're going to reopen with a late start on Thursday. We had canceled the early morning patients, but we also let them know the leadership team is going to be up early that morning. We're going to assess the situation. Do not drive to the office until, we could give you the green light. And at that time, you still need to assess, your area situation, your roadways. If you don't feel it's safe to drive to the office, do not drive to the office. We don't want anybody coming in. Nobody's going to be penalized. You don't come to work today. But, it's like we need to prepare to open if we're able to open. But at the same time, you've got to make sure that you are trying to think about the safety of your team members. The vast majority of my team wanted to get back to work as soon as possible. So, I don't think anybody within the organization thought that we were making decisions that were not keeping them safe. Again, we shut down the whole day Tuesday so that everyone had that full day to hurricane-proof evacuate. The hurricane didn't come until Wednesday night. And, again, had it not left such levels of rain, we likely may have been able to open that next morning. So like my West Chase office, we never even lost power. But the reason we didn't open on Thursday like we were hoping to was because some of the roads in the area were still pretty flooded. So I drove home from my parents' house on Thursday. I have a big SUV with 4-wheel drive. I had no problem getting through some of the flooded roadways. But if I was in a smaller car, there's no way that I would have, chance driving in those areas. So, again, we made the decision early Thursday morning. We sent out messages to the entire office, around, I think, 7:30. Hey, we will not be opening later today. The roadways are still too flooded. We don't feel driving conditions are safe, but we will plan to reopen tomorrow, and we will continue to assess the situation. And so, at that point in time, myself, other members of my leadership team, we remoted into the office's open dental, and we were able to let patients know that we weren't opening because of the flooded roadways. and we were able to reschedule the majority of them for Friday or the following week. So it's like, once again, guys, you got to really put the safety of your people, your patients, your employees, first, but you still have to be thinking pragmatically. You've got a business to run. And here's the thing that a lot of people don't even think about. You still have bills coming out even when you don't have revenue coming in. So the larger your office or your group gets, you know, we've got four
Oh, it's
offices.
a big hit.
We've got four offices. We're planned. We're projected to. Well, we were projected. We, unfortunately, might be a little low at that point, but we were projected to hit somewhere between 9.5 and $10 million this year. And at that point, our expenses for the office are somewhere between like 6.5 and $7 million. So you've got a big nut to crack. And when all four offices are shut down for essentially a full week,
That can kill a
um,
month.
and this is 2 weeks after we had another hurricane shutdown. So in 3 weeks we had two hurricane shutdowns. I mean, those two shutdowns cost our group hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, fortunately, we keep enough of a safety net in the accounts that bills. I mean, think about how crazy this is. I had a credit card bill hit the week we shut down for Hurricane Milton. So no money coming in at all. Payroll still went out that week. I had a credit card bill hit for $190,000 that same week that we had no money coming in. So this goes to the point of why you should have a safety net in your business accounts. So, again, guys, cash is king. I know some docs that, kind of take out every bit of, there's the whole mentality of profit first, pay yourself first, all that stuff. And that's fine. But I also
You have
believe
to
you
have a
should
safety
have,
net.
you've got to have a pretty significant safety net. I've got a point, where I kind of want all the accounts to be, and it varies by office because some offices are much bigger. My flagship office that's projected to do 3.5 million this year, much bigger office, bigger team, more doctors, bigger payroll, bigger bills. So, I want to keep more money in that account. One of my new startup offices that's, much smaller at this point in time, I don't need as much money. So, you've got to think about what your office's expenses are. In my mind, ideally, you probably want to have like at least 1.5 months of, expenses in that business account at all times. And then on top of that, we've got our corporate account, for our parent company, and that has some excess cash sitting in it too. So I think that's like where you can really plan way ahead for disasters and situations is just keep more cash in the business, cash on hand, so that if this happens, you're not scrambling to try to get a loan from somebody to pay your bills.
Yeah. The other thing too is, we had the hurricane hit the western part of our state. Our state's decimated still. Like the mountains of West Virginia right now are just crushed.
Yeah.
And Ryan and our team at Energize, a bunch of the guys that are here in North Carolina, they all drove out there last week and spent 3 days camping in tents, mucking out houses and helping people and cutting trees and stuff. And I was talking to a doc from the western part of the state that's one of my clients, and he had a buddy who was like right on a river, and like his buddy knew like this, I'm gonna lose my office. Like he knew it, and he proactively went, got a U-Haul, loaded up everything of like super value except for like CBCTs and stuff that are bolted in the ground. He found a periodontist practice where the doc was like in the 60s and basically retired, and the office was, I think, 6 miles away or something, but it was further upland. And he contacted the guy proactively and said, "Hey, can I just move my stuff here proactively if I lose my office and just start doing business again here?" But he was proactively thinking about how he could do it. Guys, when you lose chairs and fixtures and stuff, that can get rebought. As long as you still have patience and you have staff, you still have a practice. The human terrain of the patient and staff relationship and the team working together, that really is the practice. And that can exist in any space. It's a matter of the equipment's the easy part. So if you have a good practice, you can recover from this stuff. If you sit back and go, "Oh, I lost everything," yeah, you're not going to recover if you have that mentality. But
Yeah.
remember, if you have patience and you have dental professionals, you have a practice.
Well, and I think that's a good point. I think kind of the whole idea here is that when disaster strikes, I think some people just kind of shut down.
Yeah, they do. They shut down completely.
they get that feeling of kind of helplessness, hopelessness, whatever it is, and they're like, well, there's nothing I can do. Practice is shut down. We'll see when we can reopen, that type of a thing. But my mentality is, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So, the entire time this is going on, I'm thinking, front end, okay, we got to make sure we protect everybody. We want to, obviously we want to keep the offices safe. So I went out and got plastic sheets and duct tape and bags of soil, because it was almost impossible to get sandbags at that point in the Tampa area, and went to all the offices, and we put these plastic tarps over the doors, and we taped them down, and we put bags of soil in front. And so in case there was flooding, which the parking lot at my flagship office was fairly flooded. Fortunately, it did not really get all the way up to the door, but had we gotten the storm surge like we could have, if the storm had hit, the Tampa area, or even a little bit farther north, that area probably would have flooded. So it's like, you do what you can to protect, but then at the same time, as soon as I get that stuff done, I'm now thinking about reopening. And that's where, I kind of go back to the fact that I had 2 associate docs that were out of town. And at that time, I didn't think I would be able to be there, because I had my quarterly mastermind meeting to go to. So immediately I'm on these dental Facebook groups. There's local dental groups. There's the major dental Facebook groups like Nachos and stuff. And I made, these posts just looking for associate docs, $1,000 a day. And, the hope was we'd have someone to cover Thursday, Friday, and then we were going to open on Monday, which normally we're closed Mondays. But my one associate is on vacation this whole week. So she was already been gone for a week. She just basically made it a 2-week vacation. My other doc was going to be back, for his work for his normal shift on Tuesday. So, we wanted to get an associate for Monday as well. We very quickly actually found temp coverage. There was a lot of docs whose offices were shut down preemptively for the whole week, and they wanted to work and they wanted to make some money. So unfortunately, we weren't able to open Thursday like we hoped, but we did open on Friday, just at my flagship office, because that was the only one that had power Friday. And that was the only office we needed temp coverage for. So we had 2 temp docs there on Friday. We had a pretty full schedule. We did almost $20,000 in adjusted production that day. And between patient payments, prepayments for other treatment that was booked, and some insurance checks that came in, we collected almost $40,000 that day. So, I go back to that Facebook post I made that was receiving a lot of criticism from some docs. Again, most who had no idea how hurricane situations actually worked and how quickly you can often reopen following the storms. And, I think about the result that we had from me being proactive in finding this coverage for the office. We, brought revenue into the office when it desperately needed it after being shut down all week. We helped out 2 docs whose offices were closed and, wanted to make some money, and they each made $1,000 working that day. We also helped all of our patients that wanted to get in to get their cleanings, treatment, whatever
They were
it was
probably
done.
off from work. It was great timing.
And yes, you're right. I think
They were all off from work.
Yes.
It's
Yep.
Florida. This is what happens in Florida.
Yep.
Florida, you have a hurricane, the storm comes, the sun comes out the next day, Walmart opens, and everyone goes back to life.
Some of those patients had no power at their homes. They were able to bring their devices and charge them at their. We updated our appointment reminder text, letting people know, hey, we have power. We're open. We look forward to seeing your appointment. Please feel free to bring all of your electronic devices and charge them while you're here. So people were able to come in and charge devices that didn't have power at home, which was great. And then the other thing is, we were one of the only offices in the area that was open. We saw a lot of emergencies that day. We had a lot of very appreciative people that came in pain, and they were just so happy that we were open. So, again, you think about the situation.
Can I ask you what you do in collections that day?
I just said it was close to 40,000 we collected.
Oh, did you say? Okay, you were talking fast. I missed it. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Yep. So in my mind, that was a win-win-win. We were able to help out the associate docs that made some money. We were able to help out my team because they wanted to get back to work. We were able to help out the practice because we collected some money and scheduled production and all that.
People charged their devices. And
we helped patients out, especially the emergencies that were in pain and had nowhere else to go until Monday at that point, at least. So, guys, I know I'm on a little bit of a soapbox right now. Honestly, I have to say I was a little bit disappointed with some of the docs on there that were throwing shade at me.
I
Um,
was too. I don't like when communities get that way, and Paul does a really good job policing that. I was really like, man, this is like really aggressive.
yeah, I mean, my thought is, if that's fine if you think you would have handled the situation differently, but like, just we're in Florida facing a hurricane coming in. I'm trying to manage the fact that I've got all these offices, all these expenses. Again, I made sure that my team was safe, but at the same time, we've got a plan to reopen when we're able to. And like, you know, sorry that I'm optimistic and hopeful that we'll be able to reopen as soon as possible. And I want to make sure we have plans in place in case we're able to. Now, that said, obviously the storm could have been worse. We could have had damage. We may not have been able to
You
reopen.
make it audible, you change.
But like, if I hadn't prepared for the fact that we might be able to reopen on Thursday or Friday, we wouldn't have had doctors there to be able to open. So, again, my mindset is yes, you have to kind of prepare for the worst, but you should also prepare for the best. And, even when you're faced with disaster, you've got to think about what comes next, and you've got to make sure that your office and your team are in a position that you can reopen and resume life as normal at that point in time. So
We have to wrap up the episode, but
yeah.
real quick, Andrew, do you feel like some docs go? This is gonna sound odd. Some docs kind of go into vacation mode when these things happen.
Yep.
They go into like a mode. Just real quick. We have to wrap up, but like I deal with docs all day, every day, right? All day, and even my own practice. We had a hurricane hit ours a few months ago in Houston, and like the entire staff and doc went into like, oh, lock the doors. We'll be back in 3 days.
Yep.
And I was like, no, 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 no. Well, wait a minute. What are we doing here? Like, this isn't how we do business, right? I think docs default to vacation mode. I think, for me at least, when these things happen, okay, we did an event in at Energize like 3 or 4 years ago now. We called it Dark November, where all of our ads accounts got suspended across all of Facebook, across all of our practices. And it wasn't something we did, it was a Facebook problem. And we couldn't conduct business for a month. And I feel like weak leaders in that scenario sit back and go, let nature take the wheel and see what comes out of this. I think strong leaders get involved and go, depending on what nature does, how do I end up in a better place after this? I get excited by these events. I'm like, oh, cool. We're going to have a disaster. Awesome. We're going to learn a lot about our team, a lot about ourselves, and learn what the limits of our team is and learn what we can achieve under stress. I think that's where your A team really becomes your A team is these scenarios.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. And I think a lot of employees and a lot of, employee docs. I mean, honestly, when I was an associate, something like this happens, I'm like, okay, like great, I guess I have some time off, whatever it is. Once you own a practice though, guys, you've got to adapt that owner mentality. You can't just like, kind of check out because the office can't be open for a period of time. That's, like, I feel like it's like giving up or, whatever it is.
It's
Um,
giving
but,
up on the
but
fight. It's tapping out. It's saying,
right.
I'm
I mean, I
done.
think it's getting
You're getting
comfortable.
submitted by the disaster.
And I think you're right. It's that vacation mode mentality or whatever. And so, I don't blame employees for having that mindset. It's like, again, it's not their office. They've got other stuff on their mind with whatever's going on. But like at you as a practice owner, that's where you have to really step up. That's where you've got to have that grit. You've got to be resourceful. You can't just throw your hands up and say, well, there's nothing I can do. You've got to think about the different things that you can do to try to put yourself in the best position to win. The other thing that we did following this was I know that a lot of offices in the area are still without power, and there's a lot of patients that have been waiting to get into the dentist. So we started offering completely free emergency exams to anyone interested in the Tampa area at my offices. So I put a video out there and just let the Tampa area know, hey, I in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton, we want to help improve access to dental care. We know a lot of offices are shut down. If you're having a dental emergency, come to our offices. We will do a completely free emergency exam, X-ray, see what's going on, that type of a thing. And so we've actually seen a huge uptick in emergency exams these last couple of days because of these free emergency exams we're offering. So again, guys, you have to think about, what you can do given whatever situation, that the hand you're dealt, you've got to make the most of it. And sometimes you have to adapt and you have to try new things to kind of overcome the obstacles that are in your way. But
I mean, just coming from my military background, you have to run towards the problem, not run away
yeah,
from it. So it'll keep chasing you. If you run from it, it chases you. If you run towards it, you might neutralize it and not have a problem at all, right? Like I think people run away from it or run towards it. I'm a run towards it guy. There's a challenge. I'm going to go towards it full strength, right? I think that's really the difference in mentality. So, hey guys, we got to wrap this up. This is a really awesome episode in wake of all these hurricanes that have been decimating the East Coast. Please like, subscribe, leave a review. Please share this as much as you can. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.